Hi, welcome to Don's Manufactory. So, latest happening. I thought I'd take it in and have the front end looked at, just put it on an alignment rack, and they could tell me exactly where the car is sitting now. Because all of my tests were run with no load on the suspension, no weight. I wanted to see what the suspension was actually sitting at, and that would give me a baseline for what changes I wanted to make and where I was going to go from here. I drive it over there, and the first problem is they've got a car stuck on the rack. An hour goes by, and I'm just sitting there waiting. The car's cooling off, of course. So when they finally get the car off the rack, they send a kid out to get my car, and I guess this kid is expecting the car to just start up like a fuel-injected car. You don't have to do anything to keep it running. The computer does all that for you. Fast idle, controls the mixture, makes everything work for you. Well, he didn't know how to drive a stick, and he certainly didn't know how to keep a classic car running. He killed it 15 times just trying to get out of the parking spot and out into the middle of the parking lot. That's all the further he made it. After starting and restarting the car 15 times, the starter broke. Okay, so now I'm really pissed. Not only can this kid not drive a car, and he shouldn't be anywhere near my car, now he's broke it, and it's stuck. So basically what happened was pieces of the starter fell into the flywheel Bendix drive gear, locked the motor up. So now the car won't start. So he actually sits out there and tries to start the car with it just going clunk, 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 and which is just the solenoid triggering. Well, the starter is locked up, the motor is locked up, so all he's doing is smoking my wires. He's smoking the battery cables, trying to start it when it's a dead short. Anyway, so I'm pretty pissed, trying to keep my cool. I go out there and I say, "Look, you having trouble, And he goes, "Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't keep it running, and now it won't start." And so I jump in the car and I throw it into second gear, and then I rock the car back and forth because I could tell the motor was locked up until gyrating it back and forth kicked the piece of the starter drive out of the gap there in the gear. I heard the Bendix snap back. Then I knew the car was the motor wasn't locked up anymore. And I said, "Hey, you guys giving me a push start?" And they go, "Oh yeah." And I said, "Yeah, if you give me a push, I can start the car." So they gave me a push. I started up and I just drove off. To hell with those people. Okay, so I rebuild my own starters. The starter that was in the car is one that I had rebuilt back in the 90s. So, it was 35 years old, so I guess it was time for it to go. But, so let me throw you over my shoulder and show you what's going on. Okay, so here's what happened. This is what broke. This little clip right here, this is the retaining clip, and this is the collar that goes right here on this armature and stops the Bendix from coming out too far. So this sits right like that and then runs inside the case just like that. And then when the starter throws, it comes out like so and engages the flywheel and then retracts. Okay, so that broke. These pieces are the ones that went down between the gear and the flywheel, just sat in there like that. When I took the starter out, these two pieces were just laying in the little cavity of the bell housing. I just fished them out. The reason I have so many of these starters hanging out is because customers would come. They would go and get a remanufactured starter. These things are so easy to put in. Bolt it in, and their car still wouldn't start, and so they would have it towed over here, and say, I've already replaced the starter, that's not it, I need you to diagnose what's going on. Turns out, these remanufactured starters were garbage. This particular one, you can see that they turned the armature. They did not file out or machine out the insulator in between the contacts on the armature here, or the commutator as it were. So what happens is you can see the rear little pattern there where it arcs and doesn't make good contact. You know, you have to take this insulator out of here. The other thing that they didn't do was replace this washer. It's just a leather washer at the end of the starter. You can see the grooves on this armature where, see, this brush holder contacts the armature right here, and it causes excessive drag and arcing. So it just pulls excessive current. It doesn't have a lot of turning torque. So of course you have trouble starting your car, and you can take out your solenoid, you can take out your battery cables, whatever. It'll just kind of screw it up. So that's what the state of the manufacture was. Now I have another armature over here. Where is that sucker? Here it is. Came out of a rebuild. This was a remanufactured one. Just look at how pretty that is, right? Look at how pretty. I mean, you can see the difference in diameter between the two armatures, or the two commutators. And you can tell that they put a new commutator on here. See, they resoldered all of those wires up in there. They didn't clean that up very well. But, so, brand new commutator on there. But, why didn't this one work? Oh, because the shaft is all worn out where the retainer clip goes. So the starter drive wouldn't stay where it belonged, and it threw the starter drive out so far that it was dragging on the flywheel, and it also just gets inside here and just chews away at the housing. I've thought about maybe I could just TIG weld this up and put it in the lathe and cut a new groove in it, and it would be fine. Anyway, so that's the kind of stuff I find. So these people, you know, I end up having to just replace the starter again. You know, they say, I just want a new one. I don't want to mess with that remanufactured. And I understand that completely. So I put a new starter in. Of course, there's no core charge on a new starter, so I just kept the old ones. And I've been using them for fodder for rebuilding the starter of my Mustang, because they all had like brand new brushes in them and that kind of thing. So there's long nose and there's short nose. And the difference is this distance right here. If you look at these two end plates, you'll see this one's a lot thicker, so it pulls the starter drive away from the flywheel. One of the things that's happening with this setup is that it's making a zinging noise when I start. It kind of sounds okay when it's cranking, but as soon as the motor starts, it goes beep. And what I think is happening is that the flywheel is too close to the starter. And you can kind of see that. If you look at the starter here, you can kind of see that the wear is going all the way down to the center. I mean, it's not touching in the middle, so it's not bottoming out, but it's like it's too deep. So I think that QuickTime bell housing and separator plate has the starter. I mean, it's only off by maybe 30 thousandths, but the starter is too close to the flywheel. It's always something. I mean, could I put it back together and have it work? Yeah, it would work. This one's all done. It's got a new clip in here, as it turns out. I just went to Napa, and Ball Camp sells the retainers. 6561546 is the part number. So I ordered two so I could build two starters. The one that came out of the car, that's this one here, which was a remanufactured one at the time. I just cut a new gasket out of gasket material, and I use masking tape, 1.5-inch masking tape, and I just wrap around there a couple of times and cut out around the terminal here. And the idea is to seal it up just to keep, you know, water and stuff out of there. Armature was okay. It had a little bit of wear on it, and I just dressed it by hand. But the brushes are about half worn out. this starter here is only going to have a half-life. It was in the car 30 years already, so I'd probably get another 10 or 15 years out of it, just the way it is. The starter that's in the car right now has a better armature with more diameter here, and it's got brand new brushes. So that one is like a full remanufactured thing. The bearings are good, the Bendix is good, so it's that starter should last, another 30 years, depending on how much I drive it. But it will have trouble with that Bendix drive if I don't solve this gear mesh issue. So that's today's mission. This was the paint that I tried to paint the inside of the rear taillights with that never dried. I need to be able to turn it over without messing up the paint. There we go. Sorry, I'm bumping you. Yeah, you can see all the oil and stuff is not letting the paint stick in there like it should, but that's okay. Alright, now I want to get the paint off of the shaft. So here's the pattern on the gear, and you can see that it is hitting all the way down in the bottom. See, not so much over there, but it can hit on some of these teeth. It's hitting all the way on the bottom. So that means the starter is in too close and needs to come away from the flywheel. So I don't know if that had anything to do with the clip breaking. Probably not. So here I'm just cleaning up the paint so I can conduct the next test. My conclusions so far on the data that I have. Either the flywheel ring gear is too large, or the bell housing has the mount in the wrong place, or it's a little bit of error on both compounding to make it not work. And that's probably more than likely it. Just enough manufacturing deviation on both components in that the starter problem exists. Okay, that being said, the bolt holes that hold the starter were tapped crooked into the bell housing. I've always had problems getting the bolt started because they try to go through the hole angled. So I put a tap in there and put pressure and then just ran the tap until it straightened out. And yeah, I know that loosens up the threads and everything, but we're only talking a starter here. What I'm going to do is get out my drum sander, and I am going to sand the about 30 thousandths off of the outside of the separator plate so that the starter can move over just a little bit. And because of the crooked bolts, and I mean I got them somewhat straight, but I'll probably end up having to machine these holes just ever so slightly, file them out so that the starter can slide over. It shouldn't have a problem staying there because that's when the starter is working. The angular force on the gears is pushing the starter away from the flywheel, so it should stay in whatever position I put it in without moving around, even though the holes are bigger and things aren't as tight as they used to be. I mean, there's already a certain amount of play. Back to work. And no, you don't get to see this because I'm under the car and quarters are really cramped. All right, second check. I used my drill and my sanding disc, and I took 20 thousandths off of the separator plate. And then you can see I just sort of took a file and elongated these holes just enough to allow it to move. You can see where it engages, and you can also see that it's not hitting the bottom of the teeth. It's still a touch deep. You can see by the way it's all the way down there at the bottom of the tooth, really pretty severely. really close to the bottom of the groove, and it should have a little more clearance than that. Of course, I'm only talking another 10 thousandths of an inch maybe. So we'll get this painted, and then I'll go down there and take another 10 thousandths off of that. I just did the test on the car with the other starter. Completely eliminated the Chevrolet sound of the mismatched starter. And so I'm really happy with that. But that starter is the one that's only got a half-life left. This is the one that's got brand new brushes, perfectly machined armature, all of that stuff. So I'm going to put this one in. That's where I am right now. I just started the car, so now I'm waiting for the exhaust pipes to cool off. And as soon as that takes place, I will dive under there and put this starter in. Okay, good.